Hello, welcome to the video. So I decided to redo the video because I realized I wasn't very clear in the previous one. So I just want to talk a little bit about Babylon, 1 Peter 5:13. The time Peter wrote it, what he would have been referring to, how the name had been changed later on. But if we go to 1st or 2nd Thessalonians 2, where Paul writing to Church of Thessalonica, okay, regard the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and are gathering together to him. Okay, so they had their gathering in the first century, but there were some things that had to happen first before that, and that is the lawless one and the restrainer. Now, the lawless one, his name was Eleazar, and his dad was the restrainer. And so the lawless one revealed on August 14th of AD 66, okay, and it said the Lord was slain by the breath. Now, this is supposed to be lowercase h. Ooh, this is a bad translation. Let's see if we can find a different translation. It's supposed to be lowercase h. There we go. This is a little bit better translation. So, verse 8, and then shall the wicked be revealed. So that was Eleazar, the lawless one. He was the grandson of Judas Iscariot, by the way. And the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth. That's Eleazar's mouth, not Christ's mouth, okay? The person's mouth is the one that's operating under the working of Satan. So to capitalize this is to say that the Lord's mouth is operating under the working of Satan. It does not work that way, okay? That's just a bad translation. So anyway, and destroyed by the brightness of his coming, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and sign lying wonders. Okay, so what happened was Eleazar at the Masada, this is 3 years after the temple destroyed, this year in AD 73. He was at Masada, and by his speech, by his mouth, the rest of Israel's enemy, the last of Israel's enemy, the Jews who rejected Christ, they were murdering Christians, they were murdering Jews who came to Christ, they were stealing stuff from them and ransacking them, okay? And so they committed suicide, they burned themselves up. So the Jews, the stick of Judah that would have fled, actually both sticks became one stick, okay? So stick of Joseph, stick of Judah, they were already in Petra by this point, okay? So they would have been able to see the smoke. So they would go on the mountaintop and be able to see, okay, the last of their enemies destroyed, which is all the more reason for them to shout to the Lord. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 16, where it's mentioned about shouting to the Lord. Okay? So anyway, so what does this have to do with anything? So it was the lawless one was revealed, okay, August 14th in Jerusalem. And Peter, who wrote 1 Peter 1, mentions to those who reside as aliens scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia, who are chosen. Now, scattered, you have to understand the Jewish perspective here. Okay, now Peter was an apostle of Jews, not Gentiles. The center of theocracy, the Jewish people, was Jerusalem, the temple, not Rome. Okay, so they're scattered with from the sense of Jerusalem already. And these were the Jews who were in these 5 areas, okay, who have been scattered due to their Babylonian captivity. This was Babylon, Iraq, okay? And so he's hinting to them, it's time to go for your gathering, okay? It's a very subtle way of doing it. You have to understand, he could not explicitly announce with the trumpets, hey, time for you to go for gathering, because they had to leave quietly due to persecution they were following them. But this was a way that a Jew could easily understand it, but the Gentiles had no idea what's going on. Okay, so you 4 chapters later, 1 Peter 5:13. She who is in Babylon, children together with you, sends you greeting, and so does my son Mark. Okay, so we have to figure out what Babylon is referring to. So at the time Peter wrote this, there were 2 Babylon on the map: Babylon, Iraq, and Babylon, Egypt. Okay, unfortunately. In the year 300, it was renamed to Fortress of Babylon already, which is one thing that caused confusion. So anyway, Mark was in Alexandria, Egypt at the time, alrighty. So we go to the map, okay, Alexandria, that's where Mark was, and this is Babylon. The time that Peter wrote this, it was just called Babylon, okay, not Fortress of Babylon. So Peter wrote to the 5 churches, okay, you got Church of Thessalonica over here. So if you remember 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 15, now brethren, okay, whenever Paul used the word brethren, it's usually referring to the Jewish brethren. Stand fast and hold the tradition. Talk about the Jewish traditions, not the Roman Catholic version, okay, which is a total man-made tradition, okay, but which have been taught either whether by word or our epistle, okay. So, what was that epistle? It was 1 Peter, all right. So he wrote to those 5 churches, okay. 1 Peter. Oops, let's go to that map. There you go. So he wrote these 5 churches, and remember, Paul said either by epistle or by word of mouth, all right. So they would have received a letter, and then by word of mouth to Church of Thessalonica, telling them it's time to go. Alrighty, so they would have gotten their boats, head over to Alexandria, Egypt, where Mark was, to greet Mark, just like 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 13 says, and then Babylon, which is where Peter would have been. Alrighty, and then he would have escorted them to Petra down this way, and you can see the earth split here. Petra had the history of flooding, which is the fulfillment of Revelation chapter 12, where it talks about the serpent going after the woman. At that time, the woman was just the stick of Joseph, not the stick of Judah. Okay, there are 2 different women. There's 3 women in the book of Revelation. There's the harlot, and there are 2 women, okay? So the first woman is the stick of Joseph, okay? And then, so that's the one that would arrive first, okay? And that's where the serpent went after him to flood, and then the earth split to absorb that flood. That's what you see right here, okay? And then later on, the stick of Judah, who was in Jerusalem, would have fled, or they fled. Josephus documented it. That was on that Thursday afternoon, April 10th of AD 70. That was the fulfillment of Matthew 24, where Jesus said, pray your flight not take place in winter and the Sabbath. And sure as heck, your prayer was answered. So they fled, and that's when the 2 became one stick, fulfilling Ezekiel 37, okay? So, the point of this video, and I'm going to get to it in a little bit, the timing that Babylon was changed to Fortress of Babylon coincides with the timing of when Eusebius, in his book, this is Book 2, this is in Ecclesiastical History, Book 2, chapter 15, where he said, but Peter made mention of Mark in the first epistle, yes, 5:13, which he was in Alexandria, Egypt, which he also said to have composed at the same city of Rome. Now, this is where Eusebius is no doubt fabricating this, okay? And that he showed this fact by calling the city by an unusual figure of speech. No, he was not using an unusual figure of speech. Babylon, thus the church at Babylon, I'd like to get which you salute you also at my son Marcus. So he's trying to make it look like Peter was using an unusual figure of speech, and when he said Babylon, he was really referring to Rome. So here's the problem with that. At the time Peter wrote this in AD 66, Nero was emperor of Rome at the time, murdering Christians. So can you imagine? So you get on your boat to head for your gathering, okay? You head down here to greet Mark, and then, oh, he meant Rome. So they turn around, go the opposite direction to get to Rome, okay? That makes no sense. Only to get murdered. Look at the topography, think through the logistics. It's been a logistical nightmare. How are the 2 sticks going to become one? You know, you got the stick of Judah way over here. That mean have to travel by foot all the way over to Rome to meet the stick of Joseph to fulfill a prophecy of Ezekiel 37 for the gathering. The 2 becomes one stick. That meant they have to go past the Roman army, risk getting slaughtered, at the same time risk getting slaughtered by Nero. It makes no sense. And how many people really know their history, predicting what I just said? Not very many. So what really happened, now keep in mind there were book burnings, okay? They were trying to destroy history, and they're trying to rewrite history, okay? So we have to figure out what really happened. Okay, so all likelihood, they met Peter. He escorted them, just like I mentioned to you, stick of Joseph, and then later on, they would arrive, I believe it was September 11th of AD 66, okay? And then 3.5 years later, the stick of Judah fled, and they became one stick for their final days, their last days before their last Yom Teruah, and Matthew 23 verse 38 would have been fulfilled when the house became desolate. Okay, so anyway, going back to the purpose of the video, the timing this would change. Let's take a look at the timeline right here. So this is you actually have access to an interactive PDF below. This is actually my drawing software that you're seeing. And so what I did, so I'm going to draw a line from the year 300. That was the year that Babylon was renamed to Fortress of Babylon. So I just drew a line that year. This is 300 AD, okay? This line here is the length timeline where Eusebius has been rewriting history, okay? Now notice it's split into two lines, okay? You got one line here, whoops, one line here, and then another line here, okay? So look at this book here, it's split, okay? This is when Eusebius wrote claiming that Peter was using an unusual figure of speech and referring to Rome, and he said Babylon. Okay, now notice the length here. Okay, it's fairly short, so toward the beginning, and this here is fairly lengthy. Okay, same thing here. Towards the beginning, okay, that's when Babylon was renamed. Okay, and then a much longer length line. Okay, so as you picture this, let's see if we can just hold this here. So. Trying to make this work here. All right, so that vertical line that I drew, okay, see how this part here is shorter and this part here on the left, okay? So it's toward the beginning, and it coincides with it. Now this is not conclusive, okay, but it is very highly suggestive, okay, as far as timing goes. So he's been rewriting history starting here and toward the beginning where the whole renaming of Babylon, so again, so happened it coincided with the Roman Empire renaming on the map, and then during the time that the rest of the time Eusebius rewriting history. So anyway, there's an article here. You click on this here, it'll bring you right to here. So it's 300 AD. When the fortress was built and have been renamed, okay? Whereas here, 7th century, by the name Babylon was given by Nebuchadnezzar. This was in 568 BC, okay? Nebuchadnezzar, okay? I don't know why it doesn't say BC here, but it should be BC here. So yeah, so this was well within the time that Peter wrote 1 Peter. Alrighty, right here. All right, he wrote in 66 AD, right after August 14th. So I've been right around this period right here when he wrote that. Okay. Alrighty. So anyway, that's all I have to say. This is all part of Eusebius trying to rewrite history. You know, again, as I mentioned in some of my videos, why did he do this? If you look at the time before here, Christians get murdered by pagan Rome, and after that stopped. Now, you had the Edict of Milan right here, which was a formal writing passed by Constantine to tolerate Christians and so forth. Now, keep in mind, Eusebius was Constantine's spiritual leader, okay? He would have been the one behind it. Constantine was just after power, okay? If you watch my video, Constantine's Arch and why it's so important, you will see that clearly he was never a Christian, okay? And I knew that before even watching the documentary, but I referenced you to a link to a documentary that's done, really very, very well made, where they point out Constantine's Arch, and unfortunately, the Arch was not accessible for people for a long time. The problem with that, it allowed the writing of Eusebius to gain traction in the mind of people, Roman Catholics in particular. And so by the time the truth comes out, the Arch, when we finally have access to it, there's so many that have been bought into the falseness of Eusebius. Now, you consider the father of church history. That when you try to tell them, look, Constantine was never a Christian, they had no idea why that's so significant. Because if Constantine was not a Christian, then it raised the question, who fabricated and made this up about Constantine being a Christian? That was Eusebius, okay? And so then raised a can of worms of questions. Why did he do it? And to a lot of analysis of history, I realized he was doing the rewrite history to make it all pure natural, that all at the center of theocracy around Rome, creating an orthodox view that defined the relationship between church and state. Alrighty. And so by rewriting history, he made it look all natural. So that all came as a package deal with the Edict of Milan. Okay. So that way you can make it look natural. So anyway, the point of this video, 300 AD, when the fortress was built, would have been renamed. Okay. And again, it coincides with the timing, relatively speaking, to the timing of this right here, where he pointed out, by calling the city by an unusual figure of speech, Babylon. Okay. Again, Peter was not using an unusual figure of speech. He was literally referring to Babylon, Egypt. All right, and fortunately, that had been rewritten by Eusebius. Okay, again, this so happened the timing of the book burnings. Okay, I've linked to that. And the timing of the fake cemetery, Peter fake cemetery being built. Okay, coincidence? I don't think so. So anyway, guess I'll just raise these lines now that I made my point. Again, you have access to the PDF, interactive PDF in the description below. So anyway, thank you for watching, and hope you have a great day.